but you know something that isn't? Dancing! Alright, today's show is going to be focusing on HIV and AIDS in Canada and Malawi. And for all of you that don't know, Malawi is in Africa. So we're going to take it to the streets and see what some people think about HIV and AIDS.
Hi, I'm Allison Moores, and we're live from The Ellen Show. We're on the streets of Hanson right now, and I'm going to go ask some people what they think about HIV and AIDS. Let's go. Oh, we got a live one. Excuse me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you a question about HIV and AIDS?
Sure can.
What's your first thoughts when I say HIV or AIDS?
Sex?
That's it?
Yeah.
So, we're still on our hunt. Oh, there's one right there. Excuse me?
Yes?
I'm from The Ellen Show, and I was wondering if I could ask you a question.
Sure, I guess.
What's your first thoughts when I say HIV or AIDS?
HIV and AIDS. Can't you only catch that disease in Africa or something?
Anything else?
I don't know. I think you can only catch them from mosquito bites. I don't know. That's pretty gross to me. I don't really talk about things like that.
Okay, well, we're still searching. Oh, look, they're everywhere. There's another one. Excuse me? I'm from The Ellen Show, and I was wondering if I could ask you a question.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, what's your first thoughts when I say HIV or AIDS?
I don't really think about it that much. Can't only gay people catch it? I'm not gay, so I don't worry about it.
Very interesting. Thank you for your time.
No problem.
Oh my goodness, I don't even have to chase for this one. Let's go. Hi there, I'm from The Ellen Show. Can I ask you a couple questions?
Oh, sure.
So, I was just wondering, what's your first thoughts when I say HIV or AIDS?
Well, I had a friend that was born with HIV, so I actually know a lot about it. No one would even look at him when he was a kid, and I was always there for my brother. And I know that he never got AIDS because he was on ARV treatment.
Wow, you're a good friend.
Thank you.
So, from all those responses, we can see that education really matters. Back to you, Ellen.
Well, obviously not a lot of people know what HIV and AIDS is from that clip. So let's find out. Our next guest is Dr. Moore. She's a world-renowned doctor from Canada who specializes in HIV and AIDS. Welcome, Dr. Moore.
For having me today.
Thank you for coming on the show. So we're all dying to know, wondering what HIV and AIDS is. And leave out all the medical stuff, nobody understands that anyway.
Well, HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus.
Okay.
HIV is a virus that gradually attacks your body's immune system. Without treatment, HIV can progressively damage your cells, causing your body to be more vulnerable to infection. This progression can take years to decades. AIDS, which stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, develops when your HIV virus causes your body to be more immunocompromised.
Okay.
So AIDS is evolved from HIV.
Okay.
So when you do have AIDS, you're at higher risk to develop infections because your body's ability to fight pathogens is compromised.
Okay. Well, let me get this straight. AIDS is incurable. So is there anything an individual living with AIDS, what can they do for themselves?
Well, that is correct. HIV and AIDS is not curable. However, it is treatable.
Okay.
The treatment that is offered for those living with HIV and AIDS is called ARVs, antiretroviral treatment. ARVs can significantly prolong the lives of those living with HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
Antiretroviral treatment suppresses the virus's ability to replicate, which disrupts the action of the virus. So it just slows the progression. If an individual does decide to stop their treatment, however, the virus does become active again.
Oh, okay. Well, that clears some things up, so that's great. So I have a question. When I was young and growing up as a kid, I never heard of HIV and AIDS. So where did this epidemic come from?
Well, the first case was actually diagnosed in Canada in 1982. Since then, the government has been doing what it can to raise public awareness, including preventing the spread, reducing the stigma, and prolonging the life of those living with HIV.
Okay.
The government has actually doubled the federal funding to over $84.4 million annually, which is wonderful.
Wow, that is.
So you would think with the increase of funding and awareness that the rates of HIV and AIDS would decrease. But actually, over the past 5 years, the prevalence of positive HIV tests have gone up by 20%.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think the prevalence rates actually have gone up, or are people just taking advantage of the testing available? I guess we'll really never know. Here's a video to show how AIDS has evolved over the years.
Scientists at the National Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta today released the results of a study which shows that the lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer. Robert Bazell now in Atlanta.
Bobby Campbell of San Francisco and Billy Walker of New York both suffer from a mysterious newly discovered disease which affects mostly homosexual men, but has also been found in heterosexual men and women. The condition severely weakens the body's ability to fight disease. Many victims get a rare form of cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Others get an infection known as pneumocystis pneumonia. Researchers know of 413 people who have contracted the condition in the past year. 1/3 have died and none have been cured.
Death didn't scare me. It was living with this for a long time. That's more frightening than death.
Isn't it crazy that they thought HIV and AIDS was cancer at first? Our next guest is going to be Dr. Torpy. She's, like Dr. Moore, she's a specialist in HIV and AIDS, but she practices in Malawi, which is one of the highest prevalence rates of HIV and AIDS in the world. Please welcome Dr. Torpy. Thanks for having me, Ellen. Thanks for coming on the show. So now that we know a little bit more about HIV and AIDS, tell us about HIV and AIDS in Malawi.
Okay, HIV and AIDS was first diagnosed in 1985, despite there being undiagnosed cases decades before. Although the government implemented short-term prevention initiatives in 1985, this strategy was unsuccessful until 4 years later when the government actually started funding initiative programs.
Okay.
So it started with a 5-year funding grant, and it's continued to evolve into further initiatives that we have today.
Okay, that's great. 5 years. Okay, that's really interesting. Can you tell us like some of the differences between Canada and Malawi?
Well, in Canada, we were fortunate to have only 58,000 out of 33 million diagnosed with HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
And of those individuals who are diagnosed, we do have a lot more access to the ARV drugs, which results in many people who do have HIV, they have a lot longer life expectancy.
As you know, in Malawi, AIDS is much more prevalent. Out of a population of 14 million, over 1 million are living with HIV and AIDS. As you may know, Malawi is one of the top 10 poorest countries in the world. So in comparison with Canada, we simply just don't have the funds or the resources to treat and support these individuals. Malawi's government can only afford on average $12 per person a year for health care. So it's you can't even describe how much less it is. So as a result, Malawi's life expectancy is only 43 years old.
Oh
so
my goodness.
half of Canada.
That is unbelievable. Wow. Wow, that's crazy. It's shocking how two countries can be so different. So like tell us a little bit about HIV prevalence in these countries and why it's so different.
Sure. Well, for example, there are strong negative attitudes in Malawi towards condoms, which discourages their use for HIV prevention. So it's especially in marriage. So condom use is often associated with promiscuity, lack of trust, and a decreased sexual pleasure. So many Malawians just don't use them at all.
Okay, that's wow.
So many Malawians are embarrassed to be seen obtaining them at free health centers, and also many men in Malawi, they have to leave their homes in rural areas, and they have to commute to bigger cities. So this often leads to extramarital affairs, studies have shown.
Yeah.
So gender inequality is a big issue in Malawi. For example, there's a widespread acceptance of older men having sex with young females who are virgins. So this can often spread the disease because the older men are infected.
Wow.
So all across the board, there is a lack of knowledge about HIV and AIDS. In Canada, unemployment rates are high, which currently fuels this epidemic.
Yeah. What do you mean by fuels this epidemic?
Well, individuals who are unemployed have a higher tendency to be involved in drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
These risky
Same with Malawi.
Yeah. So these risky behaviors can often lead to the spread of HIV and AIDS, for example, through unprotected sex and needle stick injuries. So also, men having sexual relations with other men unprotected cause a high risk for transmission. This behavior is currently putting male homosexuals at a higher risk for HIV and AIDS. Within the specific population, there is the common misconception that condoms are only for pregnancy prevention.
It's interesting, actually, that point that you just made, because Malawi, anal sex and homosexuality is illegal. Like, it's not accepted at all.
Oh, wow.
So 90% of all of our HIV and AIDS cases are through heterosexual sex.
Wow. Well, I'm glad I don't live in Malawi then.
True.
There are many issues being presented in both countries here. So what's being done to find a solution to these issues?
Well, we won't bore you, but there are lots of initiatives in place to help treat HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
So for example, there's blood testing for HIV and AIDS in Malawi right now, where a person can have blood testing and find out their HIV status in the exact same day.
Wow.
But the thing is, many Malawians don't want to find out if they're HIV positive because in Malawi there's only one doctor per 50,000 people, and there's no there's no healthcare professionals to actually administer treatment. So many people find it daunting, and they just don't want to find out. They'd rather not know their whole life.
Show. Our next guest is Jane Hamilton. She will be sharing her own personal battles with HIV and AIDS with us. So let's all welcome Jane Hamilton. Thank you so much, Jane, for coming on the show. It takes a lot of courage for you to share your story with us today.
Thank you very much for having me today. I'm excited to be here to share my experience with HIV and AIDS with all of you.
So you were born with HIV? Is that
yes,
correct?
That's correct. I was born with HIV. I was actually adopted, so it's believed that I contracted the virus from my maternal mother, who was a known drug user. So that's probably how.
Wow, that's sad that you had no control over that you were born. Wow.
I know.
It breaks my heart.
It's very hard. The discrimination against HIV and AIDS is the hardest to deal with.
Yes.
Many people, it's like when I came on and hugged you, many people wouldn't even hug me.
Wow.
They feel like she's HIV positive, I can contract it from her. So it's very difficult to go day to day, especially when people know. And finding a boyfriend, especially being this age, it's because you know someday you're going to have to tell them.
Wow.
It's also the ARVs, the medication that I'm taking. I take it daily. And it's very hard also there. Like, it's covered by New Brunswick for me. It depends province to province in Canada. But I have to travel personally to St. John to get my medications.
Oh, wow.
So that's very difficult, me being a student, not having my own vehicle. It's hard for me to every day. So.
What would you say is your biggest struggle with dealing with HIV?
My biggest struggle would be the discrimination and realizing that I do live with HIV, but I can't let it control me. I need to still live my life, and HIV is a part of me, but it's not all of me.
We're going to play a little trivia game today, so I've selected 3 people from the audience. So Jaden, Janelle, and Erica, come on down! Alright, so we're going to play a little trivia game here. I'm going to ask you a question, and before you can answer and hit the bell, you have to spin around and jump in the air before you can hit it. Alright, got it?
Got it.
Alright, can HIV and AIDS be transmitted through mosquito bites?
Yes!
That is wrong, they cannot. They cannot. HIV cannot be transmitted through mosquito bites. When taking blood from someone, mosquitoes do not inject blood from any previous person. Alright, so next question. Can you get HIV from someone else's cough?
No.
That is correct. HIV can only be transmitted through blood and bodily fluids. Alright, last question. What is the difference between HIV and AIDS?
HIV is a virus that develops into AIDS.
That is correct. Very good. HIV is a virus and it gets transmitted first and then evolves to AIDS. Very good. Thank you so much for participating today. I have some prizes here for the ones that got it right.